Hello Rebel, hello GMAN Division 9, how the devil are you? It's time for another recap, and it is time for the Week 11 recap. Now, this one is like super late because I have been incredibly busy. We've got play-ins starting for the fresh divisions, Chaos Cup coming later today, actually, and all sorts of nonsense for me to organise. So apologies that the recap is a little bit late, but we are going to get on with it, and we are still in time. The big game hasn't happened yet because Week 12 is on the way and there's a huge game on the horizon. But we're going to start with the Week 11 performance of the week, and it's gone to none of the guys at the top of the table. We'll see why shortly. This week, it goes to the Boondock Skinks. Moondingo getting the Performance of the Week award for a very, very comfortable win against poor old Hack Slash and Mutilate. Finished 3-0. To the Lizards in the end. Here is the game. The humans with just the 3 armor breaks. Another horrible game for poor old Jonah. And I'm pretty much determined now that when Jonah finally wins a game this season, we're going to have a party here on the recap because it's been a really tough old slog for him. And I think everyone at this point, with the possible exception of Gruff, who has to face him in Week 13, or Week 12 even, is just praying we can see a human win at some point because they're the only side that don't have a victory yet this season, and it would be awful if they went through the whole season without getting one. So fingers crossed for Jonah there, but regardless, well played Moondingo. Looks like he was very much in control of this one, and he got a couple of nice levels as well. One on the Saurus there, which is of course Tlan of Ziggurat, and I think he just picked up block. I'll double check that now in the background. There was a Skinku leveled as well, but we're going to come back to that one. It was indeed just block for Tlan of Ziggurat. But you can see here plenty of SPP for the Boondock Skinks from this one. 2 injuries, 3 KOs, whole load of blocks, and Jonah just outstrengthened, outbashed across the course of the whole game. Great result for Moondingo, and it pushes him, pretty much secures that Lizard title we've been talking about. It now puts him, 4 points clear of Quiguanas and 5 clear of Sci-Fi Saurai with 2 games to play. So the top Lizard's looking very likely to be the Boondock Skinks at this stage, and puts him into double figures on points for the season, and is a second victory of the season for him. So congratulations. Okay, time to take a look at the rest of the results from Week 11. There's plenty of standout ones here. Bloody Mary Queens 3. Hang on, these are not the right results. Hold the phone. We're going to change this up. Sometimes I'm a moron. But, where are we going? Results. There we are. That is much more like it. Aaron Elfos 1, The Watch 0. I was wondering now. I don't remember the Bloody Mary Queens winning 3-0 this week. Aaron Elfos 1, The Watch 0. Quiguanas 0. Sci-Fi Saurai 0. And 3 big results back-to-back here. Shock and Gore 1, Erwinder's Requiem 1. Sneaky Blinders 1, Sabretooth Vag 3.0 1. And the Big Cups 1, Chosen of Papanergal 1. All of the top 3, all failing to win. All getting 1-1 draws. We'll look at them in more detail in a bit, but it's an interesting old week because nothing's actually changed at the top in GMAN Division 9. At the end of Week 11. You can see there the Boondock Skinks with a 3-0 win over Hack Slash and Mutilate, and Hubat with another win against the Bloody Mary Queens there. 3-2, what a game that was. But we will start at the top with Aaron Elfos 1, The Watch 0, and Matthew. What has happened here? All of a sudden, I think that's 3 wins on the spin now for Aaron Elfos, and another 1-0 win against The Watch. Here's how it broke down. Well, I mean, that tells its own story. The Orcs unable to remotely get close to hurting the Elves. Have you ever seen a lower game than 3 armor breaks to 4 in a match where there's not loads of Mighty Blow, but certainly plenty? Remember, the Dark Elves have 2 Mighty Blow Witch Elves there. MVP for Rinriorn gets him a level, and that was sidestep there for that blodge tackle leap player. So we've got something approaching a War Dancer now in Rinriorn, which is quite nice to have. You see 44 blocks producing just 1 KO, and actually Aaron Elfos finding 2 casualties from their 3 armor breaks, which is a hell of a return, really. But you can understand in a match where you've got the Orcs looking to establish a numbers advantage, if they're not able to hurt the Elves, it's always going to be particularly difficult for them to score a touchdown and win the game. So a third straight win for Matthew, who is doing really, really well in the back end of this season. It goes to show that it's the same in real sports when you think about it. So if you talk about something like football, for example, a coach may be sacked halfway through the season with the team really struggling to get any sort of results. A new coach comes in and they start winning games, and it becomes much more preferable to have played that team earlier in the season when they were under the old coach than under the new one. And it's similar with Blood Bowl. Sometimes it's better to face teams early in the season when they perhaps haven't quite got the development. If you're facing these Dark Elves now, you've got 2 Mighty Blow block Witch Elves to deal with, which is considerably more difficult than it would have been at the start of the season. So it's an interesting nuance of how Blood Bowl works, of course, with teams developing and, of course, losing players across the season as well. Suddenly, nobody wants to face Aaron Elfos as we come into this final stage of the season. Quiguanas 0, Sci-Fi Sauri 0, and we sort of said, didn't we, that both Lizard coaches really wanted a win to try and chase Moondingo down for that top Lizard spot. But realistically, as far as Moondingo's concerned, this is pretty much the perfect result. That being said, it's surprising that Cthulhu Collector wasn't able to get the win, because he ripped Quiguanas apart in terms of casualties. Look at that, 5 casualties inflicted in the game, 4 KOs as well. But Extreme able to hang on for a 0-0 draw in the end. So really, in the grand scheme of things, a good result for Quiguanas that keeps them 1 point above the Sci-Fi Sauri in terms of the league standings. But very much all going one way in terms of armor breaks and removals. There was mass casualties across the board. All of the skinks taken out in this game, which certainly explains why Extreme found it difficult to score, but badly hurt on 4 of them, and a niggle on the 5th one, the diving tackle skink, Tlanyold. And there was also an armor bust, as we'll come back to later in the show, for one of the Saurus. We're going to pick that one up in the injury report. But it was Robert A. Heinlein doing the work. That Mighty Blow Saurus picking up 3 casualties again, and he's well on his way to another level for Cthulhu Collector, who still has the hallmarks of a good team, but just needs to convert some of these draws and defeats that he's getting into victories, which is not easy to do, as we've already discussed with teams like Chosen of Papanurgle, for example. The Undead Mirror finished in a 1-1 draw. And it, for Gruff's point of view, being down a mummy for this one as he was, a 1-1 tie in a mirror is probably pretty good, but it's not really good enough. He had a real opportunity to catch up to the 2 sides above him who all played their games before him and drew. Here's how the game broke down. 11 armor breaks to 14 is fairly even. 5 KOs, 1 injury, 4 KOs, 4 injuries this way, 2 kills as well. It was just a couple of zombies that left Shock and Gore's roster this week. One of them was Boris, the block tackle one, which is, I suppose, of all the zombies to lose, that's the worst one, but at the same time, you're not going to lose too much sleep over it. Plague Chewer here, getting himself the MVP, which is nice, and we got an MVP zombie, which leveled up for Erwindor. So that is also good news for him, but it's all of a sudden Erwindor struggling to find a win after that great run he had sort of week 6 to 8. The past 3 weeks, just as he was in the playoff picture, he's not got a win in 3 now. Glorlane, by the way, picking up block, which is a fairly standard choice. You might have wanted a dirty player on the team. Doesn't have any dirty players. And it's another avenue for removals, especially on a team that struggles for strength particularly. There's only 4 players with natural strength access, and eventually that becomes not quite enough. So dirty player becomes another way to establish a numbers advantage, or at least keep up on that front. But yeah, Shock and Gore failing to capitalise on the chance there to... Oh, it turns out you can open the dice log from this screen. Who knew that? There you go. I learned something today. So yeah, as I say, Gruff failing to capitalise on a chance. If he'd got the win, he could have brought himself level, as it turns out, with MB Carmack on points. And that is because in what was almost down for performance of the week, Sneaky Blinders managed to pull out a 1-all tie against Sabretooth Fads. Now, I did catch this one on Aromason's stream, and the long story short is the Wood Elves got pitch cleared. They were 1-0 up off the Underworld Drive in the first half, and it was all looking great for MB Carmack. Both of his war dancers had been knocked out. He opted for a turn 8 score, which gave him only one chance of KO rolls to get them back, and he managed to get neither war dancer back on the field, which of course put him at a bit of a disadvantage in the second half. Sneaky Blinders was still at a full complement of players. Now, I know MB Carmack messaged me after the game saying perhaps I should have scored on turn 7 to give myself 2 chances to get those players back. And of course, in hindsight, it's easy to say that yes, that might have been a good idea. But at the same time, you would have offered Aromason the chance for a 1-turn touchdown in response. He's got throw teammate, of course, with goblins and a troll. So, as it happens, statistically, you would have expected to get at least one war dancer back. And he was also scuppered by the fact that it rained for the entire game, which meant that when he was outnumbered in the second half, it became much more difficult to try those elf plays to get himself 2-0 up. And once he was 2-0 up, there was pretty much going to be no way back for Aromason. But as it happens, Aromason played the second half pretty well. He held on to his wizard until the second half, which I think was a good call. Eventually managed to just reduce the Wood Elf numbers down to about 2 players. And when they eventually tried that elf play down the sideline, Aromason able to bolt one player, surf the other, and very much leave himself open. The ball scattered into the hands of one of his goblins, which meant the ball was pretty much guaranteed to go over the touchline, or into the end zone, at that point. So a good result for him, and an impressive way to deny MB Carmack the chance to go top of the table, because elsewhere there was a third 1-all draw between the Big Cups and Chosen of Papa Nurgle. Now, I managed to cast this one on Friday Night Rebel last week. We opened with this game, and it was the Nurgle receiving in the first half. The first 2 blocks produced 2 casualties for the Dwarfs and the Apo gone. So it was looking horrendous for the Big Cups, because you thought if that keeps up, they're just going to be wiped off the field thanks to all of this claw mighty blow. But they hung on, and they slowly started to target Rotters and bring the numbers back level again. Got a couple of removals on Nurgle Warriors too, which was big for them. And ended up 1-0 down at half-time, but in the second half managed to come back to 1-all. Had to score fairly early and then deny Lava Jackal a chance to win the game defensively, which he did manage. So I think, considering how badly this fixture could have gone, not too bad a result for the Big Cups. And it's a massive bonus for them that neither of the sides behind managed to better the result. So it's status quo at the top. Juvasak still has his destiny in his own hands as we go into the final 2 weeks. The Boondock Skinks, of course, with a 3-0 win over Hack, Slash and Mutilate, as we saw. And the final result from this week is a hell of a game between Paolo B and Soulforged. Hubat with a 3-2 victory against the Bloody Mary Queens, which obviously definitely rules the Bloody Mary Queens out of playoff contention now. But it was a massacre from the Vampires' point of view. 18 armor breaks to 4. The Bloody Mary Queens, again, just having no armor at all in this game. And it's perhaps surprising, because High Elves are normally fairly durable, but of course you've got that Pom Vampire now who can cause all sorts of problems, especially for the armor value 7 catches. And no casualties, but plenty of KOs from those armor breaks, or certainly plenty of stuns as well. But the Elves actually getting plenty of SPP of their own. They got a couple of levels from this game, one of which we're going to take a look at later in the show. But Player of the Week, don't worry, I haven't forgotten, you can see from this game, is Count Vladislav the Blood Dragon, which just about fits inside the graphic there. He managed to get 2 touchdowns of the 3, which just about broke the tiebreaker with the Saurus Robert A. Heinlein to give Count Vladislav the Blood Dragon the Player of the Week award here. Doesn't even fit in on the player card, barely. And certainly in the Blood Bowl line, it struggles as well. But it's a default name, and apparently default names are fine to be that length. You couldn't type a name of that length, which is interesting, but you can have a default name of that length. So There you go. That wraps up the results for this week, which brings us on to the injury report, of course. And, of course, the injury report, never particularly good news for anyone, is it? Because you don't want to be on this if you possibly can. We start with Quiguanas, who did take an armor bust on one of their Saurus. And it was a pretty good one as well. It was not Count Vladislav the Blood Dragon. It was, in fact, Louis, who is block tackle. A very nice Saurus there, but his armor busted now. So the decision for Extreme becomes whether you keep that about. Armor value 8 Saurus are suddenly much more easy to get rid of, but it takes a long time to scale a Saurus up towards block and tackle. So there is certainly a compelling argument for keeping him around for the time being. But when we get towards the end of the season, if you are keeping the team, you'll perhaps want to use the off-season to try to develop a new one that doesn't have an armor bust ahead of next season. Okay, the next two both come from the match between the Chosen of Papanergal and the Big Cups. And we will start by looking at the Nurgle team. Now, again, cast this game. It was a hell of a lot of fun to cast, especially at the end, when the Beast of Nurgle double-skulled and killed itself. We've lost another one. 2 games old, that Beast of Nurgle was. And unfortunately, Lava Jackal has lost another one again. So that is a nightmare for him. It was turn 15 in the game. Very little to be gained from the block, really. Rolled a 2 dice block against a Blodge Firm Dwarf. And double-skulled it and died. No regen. Not exactly what you want as a Nurgle coach. Expensive to replace, but you can see now after his week 12 game, he does have the money to replace that. Which at least means we can get a third one. And elsewhere, now this is, I've left this one to last because this is a massive, massive removal for the week 12 match. The killer Troll Slayer, Grong Doc Troll, took an MNG in that match against Chosen of Papanergal. The Apo was used and it didn't save him. So he is out of this match against MB Carmack. Mighty Blow and Piling On and Jump Up gone for that game against the Wood Elves, when you would imagine you want to be doing as much damage as you possibly can to those Wood Elves to try and establish that all-important numbers advantage. So this for MB Carmack is huge. He'll be delighted to see that thing gone. Gives Juvasac something to think about. But as we move on to the development report here, there was at least some good news for him. You might have saw the MVP before, went to the other Troll Slayer. So while Grong Doc Troll is out, Gurin Doc Drek Troll, Gulin Drek Troll, has picked up Mighty Blow. So there is one more Mighty Blow threat on this team, at the very least. There's just no Piling On, which is good news for the Elves, but slightly dampened by the fact that the other Troll Slayer does now have Mighty Blow and it will essentially take over blitzing duties, you'd imagine, if you don't have tackle. Frenzy is the poor man's tackle because you at the very least get 2 goes and more often than not 4 dice. Now, 2 more very, very interesting players to look at here in the development report this week. We're going to go with the Boondock Skinks. I mentioned one of their Skinks leveled up. Well, we have, for the first time this season in GMAN Division 9, a natural 1-turner. Is Chicks, easy to say. He's now movement 10 sprint, so he can stand on the LOS and run straight into the end zone. This is going to be a serious threat, and if Moon Dingo can keep this thing alive, suddenly his team has got this extra dimension that is going to be very difficult with Stunty as well. You just have to leg it for the end zone. If your opponent's not able to set tackle up all across the line, the chances of you getting that 1-turn touchdown are actually pretty good, all things considered. So line him up, watch him go. Chicks is a natural 1-turner for the Boondock Skinks, and that is a real feather in the cap of that team. The final one is an interesting choice I want to look at from the Bloody Mary Queens. Their thrower has leveled up. Ironian Taldalinrin. I think that's it. He's got Nerves of Steel now, which is an interesting choice. He's already got accurate, sure hands, and strong arm. So he's kind of got that quarterback role locked down anyway. Now, what you might have said is at this point, maybe you pick up something like dodge or block just as a defensive skill. I would have maybe liked to have seen dodge on the player just in case he does need to dodge in to grab anything. But I suppose the way this is going to work, if you imagine an NFL quarterback when he's about to be sacked by an opposing lineman or blitzer, whichever you prefer, he'll be under pressure and find it more difficult to make that pass. And presumably that the idea is similar for Soulforged here, that if there is a player marking him, he can throw that pass without having to dodge out, and his odds of making it will still be pretty good because Nerves of Steel means that, of course, when you attempt to pass, catch, or intercept, tackle zones are completely ignored. So if this thrower finds himself surrounded, he can still pass the ball out on what is mainly going to be a 2+. So that's an interesting choice. We'll see how often he gets to use it. Again, I might have liked to seen a sort of defensive skill like dodge or block just to keep him alive a bit. But we'll see. That's an interesting player. We will see how that one works out for him as we get into the back end of this season, or maybe next season if he keeps the team around. Okay. The form guide looks massively different to usual. Look at that. It's Aaron Elfos and Hubat now leading the way with 3 wins in their last 3 games. Massive congratulations to both Machu and Paolo B there, who are suddenly in great form. As I was saying before, when the pressure's off these mid-table teams towards the back end of the season, and they've got some nice development, suddenly the results start coming. And it would have been much more preferable for the top guys to have played these teams earlier on in the season. Sabretooth Fadge with that draw still hanging on to 3rd place in the form guide on the count back because Gruff wasn't able to win either. At the bottom end, Sneaky Blinders and Sci-Fi Samurai did draw, so it's still 1 point from the last 3, but of course they drew this week. Whereas Hack, Slash and Mutilate are back to the bottom, unfortunately for Jonah, with 2 defeats in their last 2 and only a draw before that. So that leaves the league table looking like this. Very much status quo. The big cups remain 1 point clear of Sabretooth Fadge 3.0, with Shock and Gore a further 3 points behind the Wood Elves in 3rd place. Is Gruff running out of time to catch up to the top 2? Well, he's still in the race because the big cups and Sabretooth Fadge 3.0 have to play each other this week, which we're going to come on to in a moment. So if that was a draw, Gruff has the chance to close to within 2 points of first place. He can also handle a Wood Elf victory, but really with the touchdown difference being as it is, he can't, because that would mean, of course, that he's got to catch up around 8 or 9 touchdowns on Sabretooth Fadge in the final week. So realistically, Gruff hoping for a draw in that fixture. Chosen of Papanergal move up to 4th. Erwinder's Requiem move up to 5th. After that defeat for Soulforge drops him back down to 6th place. But these guys at the bottom end of the top 6 have to be careful because there are other teams on their tail now with Machu and Paolo B being in such good form. If these guys in the top 6 aren't careful, they're suddenly going to find themselves overtaken by these teams who are just on an absolute tear in this back half of the season. All to play for still, though, with 2 weeks to go. Here is the run-in for the top 3. So you can see the big cups and Sabretooth Fadge take each other on. It's actually tonight. So as this YouTube show goes live, it'll be around this evening. I think it's going to be around 8 p.m. UTC. So yeah, 2000 UTC, that game is going to be going down. It's a big one. Meanwhile, Shock and Gore are playing Hack, Slash and Mutilate. In the final week, look at how it goes. Now, we talked about not wanting to face those sides in good form. The big cups have to face Aaron Elfos, and suddenly it's a scary, scary time to be playing against that team. Meanwhile, Sabretooth Fadge are up against Bloody Mary Queens, who are not in great form themselves, so that might be a more favourable fixture for them, though you never know in an Elf Mirror. And Shock and Gore have got the Boondock Skinks, who've suddenly got that natural one-turn threat. It becomes a major problem for Gruff to deal with. So if MB Carmack can get a win this week against the big cups, he is going to be the heavy, heavy favourite to take this playoff place. It is all to play for. Here are your week 12 fixtures. Now, with this being Saturday, a lot of these games have already been played. So the one we're mainly going to focus on here is the big one between Sabretooth Vag and the Big Cups. Chosen at Papanergal versus Bloody Mary Queens has already been played. I won't spoil it for you. It's a couple of teams with a win, a draw, and a loss in their past 3 games. Hack Slash and Mutilate versus Shock and Gore. Gruff will be the heavy favourite to win this one against poor old Jonah, who is still without a win. But to be fair, has almost drawn as many games as he's lost. So it's not that he's losing every week. It's just that he's finding it difficult to get victories or one more touchdown than his opponent. So just needs to find a way to get that done. We're going to come back to Sabretooth Vag versus the Big Cups because we're going to do a little bit of a preview for that one. So Sneaky Blinders versus Aaron Elfos. Well, Aromasin's got his work cut out here because Matthew is on a tear and is launching his way up the league table with 3 wins in his past 3. Aromasin is going to have his work cut out against another elf team here, but he did manage to get a draw against the Wood Elves in a match you would definitely have expected him to lose. Dark Elves are a little bit more durable though. Claw Mighty Blow will need to do its thing, but you've got to back Matthew to win that one, given half a chance. Okay, the Boondock Skinks versus Sci-Fi Sorai, and Moondingo has the opportunity here. He's 4 clear with 2 to play. If he wins, he guarantees that top lizard spot. So it's there for him. He's got the natural 1-turn skink, so you would certainly say the cards are stacked in his favour against Cthulhu Collector. But Cthulhu Collector has that monstrous Saurus that has been tearing everyone off the field in Robert A. Heinlein. So if he can repeat that trick and find a way to the natural 1-turner, you can maybe take him out. You'd back Moondingo to win, just on the relative form of the 2 sides, but it'll be all about can that Saurus tear through enough of the opposition to make the 1-turner a little bit more irrelevant. The Watch in 9th, taking on Quiguanas in 12th. Nothing really to play for either of these sides, so it's just about development and hoping that nothing dies. Both coaches got decisions to make about whether they want to keep these teams going into next season or not. But, you know, a good chance for Extreme to get himself a victory. The Watch have been struggling for victories in recent weeks. They've lost their last 2 now. So can Quiguanas pick up a win just to keep that pressure on the Boondock Skinks if Moondingo does drop any points against Cthulhu Collector? And finally, Erwinder's Requiem, who are suddenly bang out of form, are up against Hubat, who are massively in form. 3 wins in their last 3 for the Vampires, as suddenly Paolo B has got a grasp on this team and how it works. Of course, he's got an Agi 6 Vampire, he's got a Pom Vampire, but they are really coming into their element, and suddenly they're not going to challenge the playoffs next season, but could they be a force going into season 11? I imagine Paolo will choose to keep this team around because I think they're in a really good spot now. And suddenly, with win after win after win coming, he's clearly getting a handle on how to play the team as well. So one to watch for season 11, certainly, Hubat. Right. Let's get down to business. Sabretooth Vag 3.0 versus the Big Cups. It is potentially the playoff deciding game. So let's have a little bit of a team preview. We'll start with the Wood Elves, who are at 1530 TV. Here they are. Clad in pink, of course. 70k in the bank. They have their Agi 5 War Dancer Dumas with tackle. They have a rookie War Dancer. Not ideal. Certainly when there was a Mighty Blow one in the past. The Tree Man is going to have a big job to play here to try and tie up as many dwarfs as he possibly can. Longbeards, of course, can only dodge away on a 4+, which is tricky for them to do. But at the same time, Longbeard's not necessarily scared to uphill a Treeman, because, of course, if the tree doesn't have block, and you do have block, if you take the 2 dice uphill, it's around a 70% chance to at least stay on your feet. So there's things to consider for Juvasak there. Ideally, he'll not want to be getting too many players tied up against that thing, but Carmack needs to make sure that he can, if he doesn't get the tree tied up against too many players, he doesn't want it to get locked down and end up out of the game in any way. So it will be interesting to see how he utilises that thing. It's a potential strength for him. Elsewhere, of course, he's got the Agi5 catcher who can cause dwarfs all sorts of problems, and with sidestep he becomes a significant one-turn threat as well, being able to dodge through on 2+ for the most part, maybe 3+ through the middle. And a couple of guard as well, which is a nightmare for dwarfs to do, because normally the dwarfs would have an expectance that they'd have the guard advantage in this game. However, we can hit back with a mighty blow lineman of our own there, Cervantes, combined with some guard catchers. But he needs to be careful how he uses them, Carmack, because if you start basing up too many dwarfs to try and get hits, dwarfs are going to have a natural 2 dice with tackle hitting him back. So, got to be careful with those catchers. Doesn't want to lose them because he's thrown them into harm's way too quickly. Elsewhere, the big cups are at 1580 TV and have 10k they can maybe burn from the bank. They are missing that Troll Slayer, but it does look at the moment like it's going to be the Wood Elves who are going to have the inducements. So they're going to have around, what's that going to be, 50k plus 70k in the bank. The all-important thing is that is not enough for a Wizard. Because if Juvacak was playing against a Wizard here with 2 Agi5 players on the Wood Elf team, he might have had a lot of problems to deal with. Being said, he does have a Blodge runner. Remember, there's a tackle ward answer with Agi5, so that thing's not as safe as you might think. But how much Mighty Blow are we talking? We're talking 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 Mighty Blow, 3 of which has tackle built in as well. And that Blodge Firm player can do some work, as we saw against the Nurgle too. So, it's the classic Dwarf versus Wood Elf game. Can the Dwarfs cause the mass casualties that they need to leave the Wood Elves with no chance to turn this over, grind out a 2-1 win? And if they do win, they guarantee themselves the playoff place. Nobody will be able to catch them. Because, of course, they're 1 clear of the Wood Elves. They are 4 clear of Gruff's Undead. A win guarantees Juvacak the playoff place, because with 1 game to go, he'd be 4 clear of MB Carmack and as many as 7 clear of Gruff. So the prize is there for him. Can he get the result? It's a tough one to call, because if the Wood Elves are able to score quickly and then steal the ball and score again, suddenly Juvacak is having to play fast and loose to even get a draw. The Dwarfs are very, very unlikely to score more than twice, whereas the Wood Elves, if they can get themselves a quick score and find a turnover for a second score, could end up running this up to 3 or 4-0 as Juvacak tries to chase the game. It's going to be a really, really interesting one. I don't know if I'm going to be able to cast it, because I might be tied up with Plains Cast and Chaos Cup this evening, as well as Metal wanting me on the podcast. So I don't know whether I'm going to be able to cast it. However, hopefully Aromasin will be able to pick it up if I can't, because it would be great to get this Playoff Decider cast live on Twitch. I will see what I can do to make myself available. But until then, best of luck to both of these teams. It's a massive game. And of course, good luck to everybody else as well in their Week 12 games, if they haven't already been played. We'll be back hopefully a little sooner, but of course things are busy towards the back end of the season with the Week 12 recap. Have yourselves a good week.